Welcome back. Before the break, we discussed the future of the ceasefire. We also mentioned the Israeli elections scheduled for February 10th. Now, any new war, any escalation of violence would have consequences for all involved in that vote. The question is, would a lack of ceasefire actually be in the interest of some of the players? Consider this. Before the war in Gaza, the former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was leading the polls with his right-wing Likud party. As the war intensified, the popularity of the Kadima candidate, the current Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni, surged to be level, sometimes perhaps even overtaking Netanyahu. Now the war is, let's say, tentatively over, and Netanyahu, who was highly critical of the government's handling of the war, is the favourite again. So what do you do when you're lagging in the polls? Well, on Sunday, Tzipi Livni said this.
As far as I'm concerned, there is no need to wait too long. It is wrong. The reaction has to be tough and immediate. That is the only way Hamas will understand that the equation has really changed, that Israel uses power, even when a rocket misses its target.
Still with us are our guests. In Beirut is Alistair Crook, in Jerusalem, Dr. Shmuel Sandler, and in Ramallah in the West Bank, Dr. Mustafa Barghouti. Gentlemen, thanks for staying with us. Dr. Sandler, in Jerusalem, if I come to you first, if we're going to focus on the Israeli elections now. There's a phrase which has been bandied around in the media a little bit since Tzipi Livni said that, and indeed since Ehud Barak and Ehud Olmert said similar statements, that it was something of, I use this word carefully, an election stunt, basically electioneering very close to the vote. What do you make of that?
No, all the time, Mr. Netanyahu was leading in the polls. Mr. Netanyahu was leading in the polls because Kadima program, which was of a unilateral withdrawal, never went anywhere, and that's why Mr. Netanyahu objected. Any unilateral approach was leading already for the last 2 years. He's leading the polls, and the war did not affect much of the situation, of the distribution of power. The only one who gained a little bit out of it was Mr. Barak, who came up from like 9-10 mandates in the Israeli parliament to around 15. He was the only one. As far as it looks, if the polls are accurate, Mr. Netanyahu will probably take, Mr. Netanyahu's party will become the plurality party on February 10th. Mrs. Livni is really the maybe sacrifice here, the victim here, because she did not succeed. Her program of the ceasefire in Lebanon was not too successful. And now also here, she was pushing for a ceasefire, and this is also not leading to much, and Hamas is still there, and that may be the reason why she is even dropping further in the polls.
And so she comes out. And so she comes out, sorry, with a fairly strong statement, as we saw on Sunday. My question to you is that actually what the Israeli people want to hear from their leaders? I'm sure they want to hear that they've got strong leaders who will defend their country, but I wonder equally if the Israeli public really enjoys their country being at war and having leaders who will go to war again.
Nobody enjoys war, but Israel public opinion for a while was already arousing and protesting the fact that the Israeli government was allowing the situation in the south to deteriorate. 1 million people living in the south cannot be the hostages of a terrorist organization like Hamas, who wants to terrorize them and does not recognize Israel as a state, holds a prisoner without any rights. We never hear about him, no visits to him. And this was pressure on the government, and of course, maybe because the elections were coming up, they had to do something, because otherwise there would have been protests in the streets. And if you see what's going on, you see that what is there is a shift. If we see, is more to the right because of the situation, which does not lead anywhere.
Okay, let's look at the flip side then.
The result.
Let's look at the flip side with Dr. Barghouti over in Ramallah. Tell me, what is the interest amongst Palestinian people in these Israeli elections? Do they see a difference between the potential leaders, or is it seen as new leader, same country?
No, actually, we don't see any difference between Netanyahu, Livni and Barak, because they are all conducting war crimes. And the reality is, it's a very sad reality. I feel sad for the Israeli society. I see a society that is shifting so harshly and so sharply towards racism, complete racism. And I mean, the most shocking thing is the amount of seats that Lieberman is going to get. This is the real change in the Israeli electioneering system. Lieberman, the fascist, the person who in other countries would not be probably allowed to be a politician, who wants to dispossess Arabs, who is totally racist in his remarks, is now getting almost more than the Labour Party in Israel. I think there has been a shift to the right, and I am very angry and sad and astonished that one bloodbath was not enough for Livni and Barak and Olmert for the sake of these elections. 1,350 people killed, mostly children, women, civilians, and almost 6,000 people injured is not enough. They want to kill more people, and I think they're hoping to get some more votes because of this behavior. The basic problem in Israel is that you do not have a single party that is ready to end occupation. We have been under military occupation for 41 years, and no single party in Israel is ready to end it. We have been dispossessed for 61 years, and then not a single party is ready to allow one Palestinian refugee to come back. We have been under a system of apartheid that is much worse than what prevailed in South Africa, and there isn't a single Israeli serious politician who is ready to say that Palestinians are equal human beings. I think the comments of your guests, as well as what we read in Israeli newspapers, as well as the behavior of the community in Israel, is very serious, because what we see here is all these people are refusing to admit that Palestinians are equal human beings and entitled to equal rights and, of course, equal duties.
Okay,
they want us to be suppressed, oppressed, occupied, and they want us to appreciate that.
One more issue
really
I want to look at. Just one moment, Mr. Barghouti. One more, because we've been very much looking forward here at the new candidates. I wanted just one more little soundbite from the outgoing Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, and we'll talk about it after this.
The cabinet's position from the first moment was that if the residents of the south are fired upon, our response will naturally be disproportionate. We shall not return to the rules of the game the terror organizations have been trying to dictate, and we won't be dragged into an unstoppable shooting war.
Alistair Crook in Beirut. Ehud Olmert there said the response will naturally be disproportionate. Now, I know he's the outgoing Prime Minister. He's only got a week or so left in power, but that was quite a statement to be making, wasn't it?
I think it was very important, and I think it was symbolic of what we've seen. Mustafa Barghouti has expressed very eloquently the uncompromising use of force, of military force, on the civilian population in Gaza and the consequences that he saw there of that force. But I think that what the conclusion from the Israeli electorate has been is that there still was not enough force used. And this is why there are the calls, and this is why we are having this pressure for further action to be taken against Gaza. I think this touches on something very basic, almost a religious fundamentalism, if I might describe it thus, in Israel. It's talking and seeing the Palestinians as Philistines. And indeed, there was a pamphlet that was circulated by the rabbi that is employed by the army to the effect of seeing them as Philistines, a people that had to be placed under a ban and who had to be dealt with mercilessly. So I think we're seeing something that is a very important and very deep shift towards a right, but a right that suggests very little in terms of political compromise, very little in terms of a solution for the future. What it suggests is further conflicts and further escalation along the way. In other words, something that is becoming more basic and more, if you like, archetypal in the context of this conflict.
And so we wait for February 10th and see what happens then, a very important date, perhaps a change coming in Israel. Thanks to all my guests for our discussion today. In Jerusalem, Dr. Shmuel Sandler. In Beirut was Alistair Crook, and in Ramallah, Dr. Mustafa Barghouti. Thank you, gentlemen. And thank you to you, our viewer, for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. You can send your comments and your suggestions even to that email address on screen. It is insidestory@aljazeera.net. From the whole team, it's goodbye for now.